So my internet is not working, so we're using my phone, and I just have to set up now a little differently. And in order to use this microphone so you can hear me better, I need to do something. So I just ask for your patience, and hopefully this will work the way it's supposed to work, the way it used to work, although it may be a little quiet. So you have to tell me. I'm going to transmit through this microphone. From what I remember last time, I have everything backwards. Where is it? It's there. It's upside down. Okay. So can you hear me? Is it loud enough? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I think that's where I have to look. Krishna, Krishna, Hare. So just let me know if you can hear me okay. Or it needs to be louder. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Yes, it's good. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm having lots of trouble using my all this Wi-Fi that I spent all this money on. I have 2 Wi-Fi setups, and must be a conspiracy by Trump, right? He must be afraid of me, I guess. Okay, let's have kirtan. So, I'm going to put these on just in case. I want to make sure it sounds good. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Oh, you're over there. Yeah, used to be over there. So this is good. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Chinamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Picharini Namaste Sasanyavadi Paschati. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaurabhakta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Okay, everyone, we are broadcasting on my phone, which is lower resolution, which connects to the internet, some satellite tower, which seems to be more reliable, at least right now. Our concert is over. We are in a mantra concert, yeah, okay. So, now I have the advantage of reading and seeing you at the same time, although I need to manipulate a few things. So I'm going to move you. Da-da, da-da. You're getting moved. Don't worry. Okay. There you are. You've been moved. You've been uprooted. So now, let's get the document up and we will continue reading from where we left off. On Wednesday, if I can, here it is, okay. So, yeah, so now we're going to read the story. I'll try to move this closer. If I could actually put this, I wonder if I could make this higher. If I could put this higher, it could go behind my computer. It doesn't go higher. Okay. So now, we're going to read about Krishna building a city in Dwarka. You know about that? He built a city in Dwarka. Sound was bad? Oh. Sound is not, oh, it distorted, yeah. That's the phone has its own system where it brings all the sound up. Oh, too bad. Anyway, that's why the computer's better. The sound is, yeah, proper. Okay. So this is from, you can hear me now? It's okay? This is not distorting? This is actually, I don't know where this is from, but this is from the Bhagavatam. No, it's, actually I don't know. I didn't. No. 10:69:37. Although it could be 36. Sometimes it gets marked wrong. Okay. This is the verse. Okay. Oh yeah, so here it's louder. I know what to do. Now that's better. This is better, right? How about now? Better, better, better? Distorting. Saturated is actually the technical term. Saturated. Distorting also. So this should be better, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, we have different settings when I go on my computer. Okay, I think this is the setting. It's better. It's okay. Okay, yes. Much better. Más bonita. Mejor. Más mejor. After transporting all his subjects to the new city, this is because there was so much trouble with the demons. So much trouble with the demons, then Krishna he said, we're all going to take you to Dwarka. You'll be safe there. Because all the demons were coming and attacking Krishna, Vrindavan, Mathura. After transporting all his subjects to the new city, by the power of his mystic Yogamaya, Lord Krishna consulted with Lord Balaram, who had remained in Mathura, to protect it. So he took not from Vrindavan, but from Mathura. He took everyone from Mathura because there were so many problems. Then wearing a garland of lotuses, but bearing no weapons, Lord Krishna went out of Mathura by its main gate. So the reason I included this was because the word Yogamaya came up. And so I had to move the phone around. So like, I'm going to spin you around a little bit. It'll just be better for me anyway. So just hold on a second. You're getting spun around. And I hope I'm not upside down. Oh, you can't turn your phone while live. Oh, okay. So I can't do that. Otherwise, I would be upside down. Okay. I may not always be looking right at you. I may be looking away from you. Anyway, purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the following verses from Sri Padma Purana, Radha Kunda, to describe how Lord Krishna transferred the citizens from Mathura to Dwarka. So this will explain how Yogamaya works, because it wasn't a normal transfer. It was very interesting. Some of you may remember, but this will be a reminder. In the middle of the night. Should we have some music for this? I think we need some music. Hold on. We need some background music to make this dramatic. I actually have my own music, but I don't know where it is. Anyway, we'll do something you can hear. In the middle of the night, as the citizens of Mathura slept, Lord Janardhan suddenly removed them from that city and placed them in Dwarka. When the men awoke, they were all amazed to find themselves, their children, and their wives sitting inside palaces made of gold. Somewhere Krishna, the Lord of mystic power, was moving about in disguise among the homes. Oh, this is another one. So, in other words, what happened was, they went to sleep. Krishna decided that it's not safe here in Mathura. They went to sleep. They woke up. And where did they wake up? Inside palaces in Dwarka. That was a fast trip and painless as well. And that was all done by Yogamaya. So that just gives us another example of how Yogamaya works. That's why I included that. We'll create more dramatic atmosphere if there's anything dramatic to read. So here's the next verse. And this is what they saw when they got there. So this now is 10:69:37. What I just read was 10:50:57. Somewhere Krishna, the Lord of mystic power, was moving about in disguise among the homes of ministers and other citizens in order to understand what each of them was thinking. So this is Narada Muni visiting the palaces. And this is what he saw. Saw Krishna walking around in disguise to listen to the citizens like Lord Ram did, that every good king does. What are the citizens saying about me? Is there anything I can do to improve? I want to know. Unlike some politicians we know, they really don't care what the citizens are thinking, and if the citizens don't like them, then they will think there must be something wrong with the citizens. As the joke goes, when Donald Trump was told his ratings are down, his reply was, they just don't have good taste. Yeah. Purport. Although Lord Krishna is all-knowing, while executing his pastimes as a typical monarch, he sometimes traveled about incognito to acquire necessary information about his kingdom. Now, I'm not sure why I included that. Maybe as a just side information. Or maybe because that by Yogamaya. It must have been the influence of Yogamaya. No, but he was in disguise. Okay, so now we're going to read from 10:69:36 or 37, or both. There's only one verse, but it says 36 and 37. Maybe it's two verses. Translation. Yeah, so that's the point. It was by Yogamaya that he was in disguise. Now the next verse is describing Narada Muni's experience of that. Having thus seen this display of the Lord's Yogamaya, Narada mildly laughed and then addressed Lord Rishikesh, who was adopting the behavior of a human being. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Narada fully understood the Lord's omniscience. And thus when he saw the Lord trying to find out the mood of his ministers, moving about in disguise, he's trying to find out the ministers, not the... I misunderstood. So he wasn't going out to see what the citizens were thinking about him. He was going out to see what his ministers were thinking. And he had to be disguised so the ministers wouldn't know who he is. That makes it more interesting, doesn't it? More amazing. Yes? Yes or yes? Yes, it makes it more interesting. Right? According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Narada fully understood the Lord's omniscience. And thus, when he saw the Lord trying to find out the mood of his ministers, moving about in disguise, Narada could not help laughing. But remembering the Lord's supreme position, he somewhat constrained his laughter. So he thought that was so funny, that Krishna's in disguise. And nobody, well, that's funny, and that nobody can tell it's Krishna, that's even more funny. Anyway, so that happened by Yogamaya. As you remember, Yogamaya is the potency which covers Krishna, right? So that he's there, but nobody can see who he is. They don't understand his position. That's what Yogamaya does, right? Correct? Yeah. Anyway, Narada Muni, it's said here, he understood that Yogamaya is acting because that's the way Yogamaya acts. He said that otherwise they would understand who you are, but by Yogamaya you can cover yourself. You can cover yourself from devotees, and 725, you cover yourself from non-devotees. So Yogamaya covers from devotees and from non-devotees. Right? And so different reasons Krishna wants to cover himself, but the fact is Yogamaya covers him. Right? So we're going to go to 1085.28. At that time, O best of the Kurus, the universally worshipped Devaki took the opportunity to address her two sons, Krishna and Balaram. So this is really sweet. They had come back. They were in Mathura, and now they're talking. Previously, she had heard with astonishment that they had brought their spiritual master's son back from death. You know that story? Spiritual master asked for dakshina, and he said, "Can you bring my sons back from death?" And Krishna did it. And so Devaki heard this, and Devaki had lost 6 of her sons. So now she's asking Krishna, can I ask you a little favor? Remember when you returned the sons of your spiritual master, the dead sons? Well, I was just wondering, you think you could do that with my 6 sons? Previously, she had heard with astonishment that they had brought their spiritual master's son back from death. Now, thinking of her own sons who had been murdered by Kamsa, she felt great sorrow. And thus, with tear-filled eyes, she beseeched Krishna and Balaram. Wow. What a scene. Purport. Vasudev's love for Krishna had been disturbed because his awareness of Krishna's opulences conflicted with seeing him as his son. In a different way, Devaki's love was somewhat distracted by her lamentation for her dead sons. This is interesting. So Krishna arranged to relieve her of the mistaken idea that anyone else but him was actually her son. Since Devaki is known to be worshipped by all great souls, her show of maternal affection must actually have been an effect of the Lord's Yogamaya, who increases the pleasure of his pastimes. Thus in text 54, Devaki will be described as Mohita Mayaya Vishnu, bewildered by the internal energy of Lord Vishnu. But that's what we want. We want to be bewildered by that energy. There are different stories about these sons. One story is that they were known as the Vasus, and they had offended, I forget who they offended someone. He cursed them. They would have to take birth on the earth. And they said, no, no, no. And he said, okay. He relented. He said, but the curse is, I can't take back the curse entirely. So only, you will all have to take birth, and immediately you'll die and you'll go back. But one of you has to stay, and that was Bhishma. So it was preordained, but they also represented Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Matsara, lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, so that the womb was purified. So that symbolized, the killing of those sons symbolized the purification, which is necessary for Krishna to enter the heart or the womb. And womb means the mind, the heart. So anyway, Devaki is lamenting, and as we said on Wednesday, Krishna, he really doesn't like Devaki to see him as God. And so here it is said, he covered her with Yogamaya so the maternal affection would be stronger. That's what he likes. So now we're going to 1085-34. The sage Sukadev said, thus entreated by their mother, O Bharata, Balaram and Krishna employed their mystic Yogamaya potency and entered the region of Sutala. So I think one of the interesting things about what we're reading is we see how the Yogamaya potency is multifaceted. And so now to go to Sutala, where these sons are, apparently Sutala, although I thought they went back to their heavenly planet. But in any case, that's another point. The Yogamaya potency is now taking them there and enabling them to bring back the dead sons. So that's another job that Yogamaya can do. She can do many things. And what really we understand is when Krishna has potencies, those potencies, because they're his potencies, they're empowered by him. And when he wants something done, then the different potencies have the ability to do different things. And so all the things that Yogamaya does is just, these are things Krishna wants her to do, so he empowers her to do it. There's another, she's like, she has Yogamaya. Another way of saying this is Yogamaya has quite a resume. Yes? Yogamaya is not a one-trick pony. We kind of think, with a cursory look, we think, oh yeah, Yogamaya is that energy which makes all the babajis think that Krishna is their friend or their lover or their son. But she's doing much more than that. And you say, oh yeah, I know what she does. She arranges the leelas, the pastimes. Yeah, that also. But she's also involved in creation. And here we read some verses about her being involved in creation. And now she's empowering Krishna. Krishna's being facilitated. Yeah. And then Krishna disguised himself. All these course. That's her main job, is disguising Krishna. Anyway, that's the conclusion of our discussion, that Yogamaya has a very broad resume. Okay, we have another verse. I didn't note the number. So now we're jumping ahead to the story of Jai and Vijay. No, it's their past. Yeah, this gives some, this is just a side point. This is how these 8 sons appeared. Because of that improper act, they immediately entered a demoniac form of life, and they took birth as sons of Hiranyakashipu. This was before. The goddess Yogamaya then took them away from Hiranyakashipu, and they were born again from Devaki's womb. After this, King Kamsa murdered them. Devaki still laments for them, thinking of them as her sons. The same sons of Marichi are now living here with you. So previously they were the sons of Marichi. The father was Kalanemi. And they were bad boys, and this is what happened to them. So there's some commentary here. We'll read. But I studied this a little bit, and you get different stories, completely different stories about how this happened, which means that it could have happened in different yugas differently. Acharya Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti explain that after taking Marichi's 6 sons from Hiranyakashipu, Lord Krishna's Yogamaya first made them pass through one more life as children of another great demon, Kalanemi. And then she finally transferred them to the womb of Devaki. Formerly, an asura named Kalanemi had 6 sons. Named, okay, you have to remember these names. Please pay attention, students. Hamsa, Suvikrama, Krata, Damana, Ripur, Mardana, and Krodha Hanta. You've got that memorized? Oh, I forgot. It's Kali Yuga. Yeah, that's right. You can't memorize so quickly. Oh, okay. Anyway. They were known as the Sadgarbhas, or 6 Garbhas, and they were all equally powerful and expert in military affairs. These Sadgarbhas gave up the association of Hiranyakashipu, their grandfather, and underwent great austerities to satisfy Lord Brahma, who, upon being satisfied, agreed to give them whatever benediction they might desire. When asked by Lord Brahma to state what they wanted, the Sadgarbhas replied, "Dear Lord Brahma, if you want to give us a benediction, give us the blessing that we will not be killed by any demigod, Maharoga, Yaksha, Gandharva, Pati, Siddha, Charna, or human being, nor by great sages who are perfect in their penances and austerities." Brahma understood their purpose and fulfilled their desire, but when Hiranyakashipu came to know of these events, he was very angry at his grandsons. "You have given up my association and have gone to worship Lord Brahma," he said, "and therefore I no longer have any affection for you." Do we need music for this? Okay, but I don't have scary music. We'll just use the music we were using before. And pretend it's scary. But when Hiranyakashipu came to know of these events, he was very angry at his grandsons, and he said, "You have given up my association and have gone to worship Lord Brahma, and therefore I no longer have any affection for you. You have tried to save yourselves from the hands of the demigods, but I curse you. Your father will take birth as Kamsa and kill all of you, because you will take birth as sons of Devaki." There you go. That was a true to form, Hiranyakashipu cursed his own grandsons. So, with that curse, they had, as we just read, they had a birth as the sons of Kalanemi, and then they now will take birth from the womb of Devaki, and they will be killed by Kamsa, as we know. That's what happened. So Kamsa came as, this is interesting, right? Kamsa comes as Kalanemi. So these were his sons, and now he's killing the very sons who were his sons in the last life. Interesting. This description is mentioned in the Hari Vamsa, Vishnu Parva, 2nd chapter. According to the comments of the Vaishnava Toshani, the son of Devaki, known as Kirtiman, was the third incarnation. In his first incarnation, he was known as Smara and was the son of Marichi, and later became the son of Kalanemi. This is mentioned in the histories. This is from 10.1.69 purport. So this is Prabhupada's explanation. And so that's one of the stories, yeah. Okay, that was bonus. That was bonus information. Okay. Now, I'm going to read. I'm sorry, I don't know where this is from. This is just one short verse and purport about Yogamaya, different manifestations of, or different ways Yogamaya works. The influence of Yogamaya will inspire the gopis with the sentiment that I am their paramour. Yogamaya is the name, this is the purport. Yogamaya is the name of the internal potency that makes the Lord forget himself and become an object of love for his pure devotee in different transcendental mellows. This Yogamaya potency creates a spiritual sentiment in the minds of the damsels of Vraja, by which they think of Lord Krishna as their paramour. This sentiment is never to be compared to mundane, illicit sexual love. It has nothing to do with sexual psychology, although the pure love of such devotees seems to be sexual. That's the big word, seems. One should know for certain that nothing can exist in this cosmic manifestation that has no real counterpart in the spiritual field. All material manifestations are emanations of the transcendence. The erotic principles of amorous love, reflected in mixed material values, are perverted reflections of the reality of spirit. But one cannot understand the reality unless one is sufficiently educated in the spiritual science. So we had discussed this on Wednesday. Just this purport reiterates what we had discussed, but I would like to read that last line. One cannot understand the reality unless one is sufficiently educated in the spiritual science. So that question came up on Wednesday. Krishna Karshani asked, well, why did Prabhupada write the Krishna book and let people read it? Because he was educating them in the science. So he explained everything. That's why. That's the reason. So, as we know, even materially, like you have affection for a friend or a loved one, and it doesn't matter. They may be famous or wealthy or so forth, and that doesn't matter. And sometimes that just gets in the way. It's not why you have that relationship. So, as we know, Krishna's opulence, actually gets in the way of affection. And for us, we can't just artificially think, okay, well, I'll worship Krishna just as my friend or my lover, and I'll chastise him and I'll get upset with him. That we can do later when the relationship actually develops. Now we have to worship Krishna in his supreme position. There was a story, I believe it was Gaura Das Babaji, although it could have been Jagannath Das Babaji, but I'm pretty sure it was Gaura Das Babaji. And some kids were harassing him. We find this, that kids like to harass sadhus because they know sadhus won't do anything. So they were harassing him. And when they were harassing him, he said, Krishna, I'm going to tell Mother Yasoda on you. He saw that these kids were sent by Krishna to harass him. That's how we saw it. Can you see it like that? I don't recommend you see it like that. That would be artificial. But that was natural for him to see it that way. Interesting, right? We have to see, obviously we have to see things differently. Now, then the next question is, well, at what point can I see it differently? Like when? That's called Raganuga Bhakti, which usually would happen at least from the stage of Nishta or beyond. But that's like, you can try, but you understand your relationship with Krishna when you're purified. You can understand your inclination at a lower stage, but to actually have that relationship, it becomes quite clear on the stage of Asakti, and then on the stage of Bhava, it's revealed. What is your relationship? So, it's like, for us, it's like we understand things with our head. You can study Raganuga Bhakti and what it is. You can study Prema Bhakti and what it is, but it's in our head. But it'll get in the heart at some point, and when it gets in the heart, then it's there. And when it's there, it's there. Just like sometimes devotees would ask Prabhupada, said, when we're chanting, can we think of Krishna's pastimes? Sounds kind of like a funny question, doesn't it? But what was meant by the devotees was, is it artificial to think of Krishna's pastimes? Because it's like I'm forcing myself to think about them, because I'm not naturally thinking about them. It's like, okay, mind, think of the pastime. Okay, I got the pastime in my head. Hare Krishna, I'm going to hold that pastime in my head. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh, it's going away. Get it back. So it's not like that. So Prabhupada said something quite interesting. Well, number one, he said, it's not artificial. So he said, if you're trying to force your mind to think of the pastime, he said, it's artificial. And the reason he explained it's artificial is because within the name of Krishna is the pastime. Nam Rupa Guna Lila. So when you say Hare Krishna, if Krishna is there, his qualities, his form, and his Lila is there. You don't have Krishna without those, right? Just like you. If you are there, then your qualities come with you. Your pastimes, you're doing something. Your form, it's all, right? They're not separate. Oh, Radha Priya came over to see me. Well, first her qualities came. Well, actually, it was her name that came. I heard her name. Then about a half hour later, it was her qualities. And then she finally came over and I could see what she was doing. But it's not like that, For us, it's kind of like that in how we conceptualize the holy name, because we think, well, I'm just chanting, it's Krishna and all that. I'm chanting, but actually, it's just Krishna's in the sound. But the Leela's there. They're all there together. So Prabhupada said, you can think like that if it's natural, if it's naturally coming in your mind. And at a more advanced stage, it will, because you'll realize Krishna is in his name. So if Krishna's there, his Leela's there. And then it said at that stage, when you're seeing the Leela, that's preliminary. But the higher stages, you're not seeing the Leela when you're chanting, you're in the Leela. And this kind of answers the question of, if you ever wonder, how could somebody chant like Takaharidas, chant 192 rounds a day? Well, if you were chanting and you were, by chanting, were in the Leela, I don't think you'd want to stop, would you? Like you'd want to stop for lunch, you'd have to leave the Leela. Krishna, I'll be back in a half hour. I have to eat, Krishna, I'll see you in 2 hours. I have to sleep. You wouldn't want to leave it, right? So, but what we understand is the stage before Bhava is called Asakti, and on that stage, your relationship becomes very clear to you. It's not revealed, but the inclination is very strong. The inclination may come before that. The desire may come before that. By associating with advanced devotees, that inclination or that desire for a particular relationship may come. Now, here's another interesting point. One time I read, a devotee said that love of God is not within you, it comes outside of you to you. I said, wait a minute. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema, Shadu Kabanoi, Shravanadi, Sudha, Chite, Koroyo Doi. Chaitanya Charitamrita says it's within you. Right? And it just has to be awakened. But, Chirada Dattam Nijagupta Vitam. Lord Chaitanya came to give what he's never given before, which is swaprema, love of himself, prema, in the mood of the residents of Braja. So he never gave it. So then the next question is, well, he's giving that love. Does that mean it's in me or it's not in me? Now I'm confused. And some devotees say, no, it's not in you. And so, but how could it not be in me? Because the Shastra says it's in me. And the answer is, as often, the answer is both. Love of God is in you. It's awakened. It comes out by the process of bhakti. But that love that Lord Chaitanya is giving in the mood of, what does it say? He's giving it. That means it's extraneous. In this age, he gives it. So that's amazing. If you think about it in that way, it's quite amazing. It's that kind of love is being given. And also, as we said on Wednesday, love, prema, cannot be achieved. It can only be given. So it's like there's nothing, you can't come to a point where you say, I'm going to get love of Krishna. No, you can't get it. It has to be given. You may remember this story I told. It's a beautiful story. Long ago, I told this story. It's both. So, I told the story of this Prabhupada, one of Prabhupada's Sanskrit people, went a little crazy. And he got influenced by some devotees at Radha Kunda, and of course, they're fond of chanting 64 or more rounds. And if you look at Vaishnava theology and history, you'll see that basically if you don't chant 64 rounds, you're not really a devotee, not the real thing. You're just some kind of Special Olympics devotee, concession, but not really the real thing. Not, you have to be. Excuse me for a minute. I have to plug in my phone. Where do I plug it? So he had the audacity and the foolishness to send a message to Prabhupada. This wasn't like a message to the devotees of ISKCON. This was to Prabhupada. If you don't chant 64 rounds, you can't get love of God. Can you imagine? God, sometimes I'd see a devotee do something stupid in relation to Prabhupada, and it's like, you can't imagine how they would do such a thing. But influenced by these Radha Kunda babajis, he was convinced. and that Prabhupada chanted 16 rounds also. And so that means Prabhupada's not going to get love of God like he has to get it. We're not going to get love of God. I don't know what his intention was, maybe that no one's going to get love of God. And then Prabhupada made a very important remark to the devotees who were telling Prabhupada, or with him when this letter or this discussion was going on. And he said, you cannot force Krishna to give you love. So this devotee was saying, you can't get love unless you chant 64 and basic rounds. And basically Prabhupada was saying, you can't, there's nothing you can do that would automatically guarantee you'll get love, that you would force Krishna to give you love. It doesn't work like that. Interesting, isn't it? So love, you can't achieve love. It has to be given by Krishna. That's the only way to get it. Of course, you can qualify yourself for it. You achieve bhava, you get purified, as we read in the last few days. The Munichari gopis became purified. But ultimately, Krishna has to say, okay, you got me. You got me. All right, I'm giving it to you. It's got to come to that point. But there's nothing you can do that say, well, if I do A, B, and C, then on Thursday at 3 o'clock, I'll get love. It doesn't work like that. Krishna has to give it. So that was contained. That statement was contained in Prabhupada's response. You think, like you chant 64 rounds and you'll get love of Krishna, like that's how you do it, that's it. No, you can't force it. So that's the idea. Okay. So I wanted to read a sentence. This is about relationship between Krishna and the gopis. Tattoo this sentence into your mind. This sentiment, this yogamaya potency, creates a spiritual sentiment in the minds of the damsels of Braja, by which they think of Lord Krishna as their paramour. This sentiment is never to be compared to mundane, illicit sexual love. So, I'm going to say something which I wish I could just transfer my personal realization to you, but I don't know if I have the potency, but I will try. This sentence here, this is a problem solver. This is the problem solver. So I'm going to read it again. This sentiment is never to be compared to mundane, illicit sexual love. So, mundane, illicit sexual love is the reason we're in this body. That's why we took birth. That's the only reason. Without that desire, we would not have taken birth. Maybe we'd end up in Brahman or somewhere, but we wouldn't take birth in a material body. That's the main reason why we came here. It's right in Bhagavatam. Prabhupada said, he said, we took birth in this world being attracted by beautiful woman. It's right there in black and white. That's why we came here. Which, of course, is why we stay here. And if we're going to become Krishna conscious, then that's the problem that has to be conquered. And the biggest obstacle to becoming Krishna conscious, that's the obstacle, but it's the conception that Radha and Krishna Leela is anyway connected with that or in any way resembles it. And as we were saying last week, which I'm dying to communicate this, but I don't know if I can shock you into this, but how should we say it? Yeah. I think the verse of Jamunacharya is the best way to describe this. What did he say? He said, my experience in Krishna consciousness of rasa is so deep, and it keeps increasing every day. And it's so relishable. It's so palatable. It's so real. It's so amazing that when I look back at my past life and think that I actually engaged in sex, that thought disgusts me so much. And I just spit like, wah! Did anyone ever tell you a story? Like, maybe you hear a story how some person was killed, mercilessly killed and tortured, and it's just like, oh, stop it. Oh, I don't want to hear it. Something like that. That the purity of what he's experiencing is so pure, so uncontaminated, so deep and relishable, that to think of sex it's like, oh, I'll tell you what I did this morning. I was making cinnamon toast, except for I missed one detail. What I thought was cinnamon was chili powder. So I put chili powder on my toast. I wiped it off, but. So we think chili powder toast is the real thing. And it's what pains the devotee is when he sees other devotees who are trying to be Krishna conscious, trying to get pleasure from the very thing that for him is disgusting. And he wants to communicate that, but it's so hard to communicate it because you need realization that, no, this is actually disgusting. And this relationship between Radha and Krishna is so deep, it's so relishable, it's so beautiful, it's so powerful, it's so everything, that to even think that there's any pleasure in imitating that is a kind of insanity. Of course, I understand we have bodies, I understand we have attachments, I obviously understand I have a body. And I've battled with those attachments. So I'm not saying that I don't know this and just writing it off that it's easy. But as you progress in Krishna consciousness, you're supposed to come to that point where you look at ordinary, mundane sex and it has no attraction because Radha and Krishna Leela has enthralled your mind. And that's the real sex. This other thing is just, it's imitation. But if we could, it's just like everything mundane, the way the acharyas describe it, they describe it like poison. The things that are relishable to us, the things that we look forward to, the things that we enjoy, they describe like poison, but they describe it in graphic terms like donkey urine, like the desire to be honored. It's like taking a bath in donkey urine. They're very graphic, And, it's good because we need that because, being honored is like, wow, it doesn't get any better than that, right? And then I think it might have been Jiva Goswami. Both Jiva Goswami, maybe. There's two things, as I remember. One is the pride is like bathing in donkey urine, and the other one I forget. There may be two examples of donkey urine or pig stool or something graphic. Even if it's not true, you could say for a pure devotee, the desire to be honored is like bathing in pig stool. It's just horrible, right? But that's their experience. That's the point. That's how they experience it, relishing Radha and Krishna. Then these other things that we think are pleasurable, that we relish, to them are like, this is like stool of a pig, or this is like donkey urine. And you're thinking it's relishable. So the depth of pleasure and rasa that one can get from understanding Radha and Krishna is so deep and so beautiful and so amazing that it would make mundane pleasure, especially sexual pleasure, appear to be disgusting. And sometimes Prabhupada would explain it that way. And I always felt as a young man, with all the hormones and going out on Sankirtan and meeting women all day. In our day when we did Sankirtan, it was in parking lots and it was like 90% women. And, battling all of that. And when Prabhupada would say something like this, like well, after all, sex is just the rubbing. It's just an itch. Just tolerate it. He reduced that whole thing to an itch. I always found it to be like extremely, extremely powerful that he would do that. Just like, it was like, just like shake us up. Have you ever had that experience that you have some like material attachment? And it's really hard to give up, and you should give it up. And you read a statement or you hear something in class where it's minimized to like insignificance. Do you ever have that experience? Or it's portrayed as something really distasteful, and it just shakes you right out of that attachment. Have you ever had that experience? Well, that's what the words of the spiritual master do. So a lot of times when I would hear these things that Prabhupada would say, like what I call the thunderbolt or the thunderbolt or the thunderstorm preaching. You're sitting in class and it's like, the temple, there's an earthquake. No, Prabhu, it's just that statement of Prabhupada was heavy. There's no earthquake. And it feels like an earthquake or a, lightning bolt. And I always found that that's just what I needed. I needed a lightning bolt to hit me on the head because I'm so attached. So these portrayals by the acharyas are very valuable for us. I like to be honored. Prabhu, you're that's like bathing in donkey urine. Like, what's wrong with you? Prabhu, I love sex. What's wrong with you? That's like Jamunacharya. It's disgusting. So sometimes hard to hear, sometimes painful. But I just wanted to communicate that for the devotee who's actually relishing Radha and Krishna Leela, rasa, that's his experience of material things, the things that we think are so great. That's his experience. This is just horrible. And by hearing that, we can reflect what is available in Krishna Leela. What must they be tasting? What must they be experiencing? And how I'll never experience that if I'm still attached to tasting material rasa. So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I wish I had a magic wand and I could just go up to you and go, bing! And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah, exactly. I totally feel what you're saying. Actually, I realize now everything you're saying. I wish I had that wand. Maybe someday Krishna will give it to me, but transfer some realization from my heart to yours. But this is an important realization to have. That what we're trying to get from this world is just, the pure devotees have rejected it as poison. And we're thinking, this poison is really good, yeah. And that poison is destroying our spiritual life. That's the problem. So we're running after poison. What did Narottam say? Running after poison like it's nectar, thinking like it's nectar. So, yeah, that's why this statement is so important. This sentiment is never to be compared to mundane illicit sex. And the last one, the erotic principles of amorous love reflected in mixed material values are perverted reflections of the reality of spirit, but one cannot understand the reality unless one is sufficiently educated in the spiritual science. So there's a reality which is transcendental, which we cannot understand unless we're transcendental. And in order to be transcendental, we have to transcend the mundane, specifically transcend the sexual and sensual desire. And then when we transcend, purify, detach from it, then we have the qualification to understand and experience and enter to some degree into the transcendental. And that's where all the nectar is, in the transcendental. It's not down here. But as we're trying to enjoy down here, we get pulled down here from the transcendental. Then we can't relish the transcendental, and all we get is the temporary material pleasure, which causes us frustration and anger and depression and shame and guilt and all kinds of other horrible feelings. And then we tell ourselves, I'm never going to do that again. And then we get all fired up for the next 3 minutes and transcend, and then we go back and do the same stupid thing again. So that's the problem. But the nectar is in transcendence. So when you have to do some austerity and you say, oh, it's so hard, I don't feel like it, it's too early, I don't want to get up, it's too cold, and I'm too tired, and I'm too lazy. And just remember, that's helping you transcend, and that's where the nectar is. So all this pain of austerity enables you to get the nectar, and all the enjoyment of sense gratification, it has the opposite effect. You don't get the nectar then. You're like, well, I'm comfortable. Everything's nice and comfortable. Oh, great, nice and comfortable. We've been nice and comfortable for who knows how long, and we're still looking for what the heart desires, which is rasa, which is that relationship. So that's the point. So sense gratification, just like it's like we want to go into that transcendental realm, and we're prevented from it because of our desire to enjoy, where there's actually no enjoyment, and the enjoyment is up there. So that's the point that I wanted to make, and that was took me a long time to make it. That was my magic wand. I hope you got some realization, and I will read what you said. Mm-hmm. I just have to go back to the beginning to see if there's anything from the beginning. Anyway, I don't think there is, so let's go. I think we have some. Why am I not able to find? Hold on. Confusion. This is from Krishna Krsna, if we love somebody, it's natural for us to think of this person. We hear that we should chant with love. How to chant with love if we don't have love to Krishna? I'm talking about myself. Well, actually, our love is our sincerity. To be honest, if I would be Krishna, I would not like the way I am chanting. Oh, I like that. I'm loving that. What a nice way to think. To think, okay, everyone, you have now been promoted to the position of Krishna, and you have the great fortune or misfortune to be hearing yourself chant as who you were, right? So, how does it sound to you? I like that. So, now, what's interesting about your statement that I don't have love is that Prabhupada would sometimes say your sincerity is your love. Okay, I don't have prema, or I don't have bhava, but Prabhupada would sometimes say, well, you can all do this because you love Krishna. So what did he mean by love Krishna? He meant that either you put Krishna above other things in your life, so that's your love, even though you might say, we don't really have love. But you've given your life to Krishna so that you've put him above other things, so that means you love him more than you love other things. Or you use everything for him, that means you love him more than other things because you wouldn't use them for yourself. So you've put him above other things in your life, therefore that means you love him, so that's one way of looking at it. And just the fact that for us, sincerity is it's the closest thing we can get to love or call love now. If we want to, compare the love we have for things of this world that we say we love, and apply that to Krishna, that mood and that sincerity, then that sincerity is our love. And sometimes devotees would say, well, Prabhupada, how do you love me? How can we love you? He said, well, follow my instructions, follow the principles. That's your love. Your love. And then another one, your love is shown by cooperation. So Prabhupada did give us some practical examples of what love is. So, in that way, you can manifest love, especially adherence to the instruction. That's the highest manifestation of love. Like, you look at Prabhupada's life, and you look at his life in connection with his spiritual master. And so you see, you think, well, Prabhupada really loved Bhaktisiddhanta. Look at how dedicated he was. So why do we see Prabhupada as one who loved Bhaktisiddhanta? Because he followed every instruction very, very carefully. I was just reading, I've been reading the last week or two, the biography of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And one thing I read, quite troubling, that I read yesterday, was how Bhaktisiddhanta, in the Gaudiya Math, after a certain point towards the latter part of the life of Bhaktisiddhanta, the later part of his pastimes, preaching pastimes, they built a beautiful temple, but they started to become very successful, and some of the devotees started to become affected by the success and enamored by the prestige, and they weren't living so simply as before. And anyway, there were problems in the Mat, and Bhaktisiddhanta was very concerned about it. And these were very, very elevated devotees. And you know the history. Over certain concerns, they didn't follow exactly Bhaktisiddhanta's instruction. He never told them. I said, who will be the Charya? And he said, I will not appoint an Acharya. He'll be self-manifest. And then, as the book describes, he established the GBC the day he was dying, the last day he established it. Interesting. In any case, we know the history. There was a division. So as I was reading it, I was thinking, these devotees were very pure, very elevated, very scholarly, had so many good qualities. But it was difficult for them to follow the orders to the T, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted, unified movement, and so many other little things. Not so many, but some other things that were difficult for them to follow perfectly that created some problems, or at least if it didn't create a problem, they fell short of perhaps fulfilling this big desire to take, not perhaps, but fulfilling this big desire to take Krishna consciousness outside of India. And then you look at Prabhupada's disciples. Well, first you look at Prabhupada. He was able to do it, and Prabhupada used to say, well, I was just a grihasta. I was nobody special in the Mat. And they were all surprised that, this grihasta, this nasty grihasta became successful. How did he do it? And then Prabhupada's telling us the same thing. Well, you can do it also. And what you get is this kind of thread where Prabhupada's saying, I was not part of the Gaudiya Math. I was not involved in it very much. I was not a sannyasi. I was a grihasta, fallen grihasta, that idea. But somehow or other I came out more successful than my godbrothers. Why? Because I followed the order of my spiritual master. Prabhupada never said, I became out successful because I was better. He always said, because I didn't change anything and I took the order very seriously. So I think this is really significant, because if you look at ISKCON is composed mainly of people who weren't born as devotees. And so when you look at it that way, you could think, well, how can this movement succeed? It's all just foreign-born outcasts who have so many bad samskars. And then what happened? It succeeded. Why? Because the devotees, by nature, were very, very chaste to Prabhupada's instructions. That was just a quality that we all had. And that was our success. And Prabhupada could use us because we would do what he said. So as I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, here we can see this is the greatest quality of a devotee, is that he's chaste to the order of his guru. He understands the heart of his guru. He fulfills that. And that's what Prabhupada did. And that's why Prabhupada said we could become successful if we just followed him. We would have the same success, The same potency would work through us that worked through him. So I was thinking that you had so many great devotees, but after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left, they had a difficult time. And ISKCON, maybe we're not so great, but our great quality is that we were very dedicated to fulfilling Prabhupada's desire. And so I think that's the greatest lesson, and that's the greatest quality we could have, is this obedience to Prabhupada's instruction. Dedication, understand what he wants in his heart, how he wants this movement to go, protecting this movement, no matter how difficult it is, for us to work with one another and so forth. And because that's what Prabhupada wants. And as a result of that, we become empowered and we do amazing things. So, that's your love, Krishna Krishna. You understand Prabhupada, understand what he wants. The other thing that I think is important for us to recognize with Srila Prabhupada is, and you see this by reading the life of Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada was very attentive to the details of what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted. And like book distribution, Prabhupada was really pushing book distribution, but he noted that. It wasn't just that Bhaktisiddhanta said, preach, write. But he noticed that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was willing, he once said, willing to sell a temple and publish print books. So Prabhupada said, oh, that means books are more important than temples. That means books are really important to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So Prabhupada was always pushing books, like almost fanatically, because he saw that's what Bhaktisiddhanta did. That's why. But this was so important. Books were so important to him. And other things that Prabhupada did, you can, by reading the life of Bhaktisiddhanta, you see, oh, this is why Prabhupada did that, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did it, or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed others to do it. So it all just was like this picture was coming really clear that here's Prabhupada, he's paying attention to all these little details. Theistic exhibition was something they did. They built dioramas, they went city to city with these big displays. Prabhupada noticed that. He had that done in some of the temples, built these dioramas. He sent devotees to India to learn how to build them. So why was he doing that? Because that's what his guru did. That's what his guru gave importance to. So it's really nice to see. Anytime you hear Prabhupada speak or write something that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted this, or always desired this, or always told us this, that's Prabhupada. He remembers these things. This was a desire. This is what he wanted. This is what he said. We can't forget this. So that's what makes a good disciple. And then a disciple that can do that is empowered, is protected, and is given the opportunity to do amazing things that maybe ordinarily couldn't be done otherwise. So that's what came out, and I think that's very, very important in terms of love. Just notice what Prabhupada wants and make the sacrifice you need to make to do it. Okay. So I will read some other comments. Did really Srila Prabhupada chant 16 rounds? Yes. God brother of mine asked Prabhupada personally, how many rounds do you chant, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, like you, 16. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Prabhupada just, 1 round, 16. He was an example. Yeah. It was like Prabhupada said, how do you know who's a pure devotee? Well, look at how many devotees he's making, then you know. So, I think that was Prabhupada's, Prabhupada said that was his life as a Grihastha, 16 rounds. Okay, Marco likes the thunderbolt preaching. Sometimes you get some devotees there in the same mood as Prabhupada, thunderbolt preaching. I don't know if it communicates so well. So I have a question from Sureshwar Das from Bangalore. Based on sincerity only, can we go back to Godhead? Because it might be difficult to develop pure symptoms of love. Yeah. And there's some... Whoops, I lost you. Can we go back to Godhead based on sincerity? Might be difficult to develop pure symptoms of love of pure devotees, yeah. Maybe we need to redefine love as dedication to the order. Because once you do that, and you do your best to execute Krishna consciousness, you don't have much more control over your advancement. It's just mercy. And it's your how much you've been conditioned, how far you evolved when you came into this life. But sometimes Prabhupada would say that, just distribute my books. He'd say the book distributors, distribute my books, and you go back to God in this lifetime. He'd say to the Pujari, take care of the deities. In this lifetime, you go back to Godhead. So there is this indication that by doing something that's pleasing, very pleasing to Prabhupada, or very pleasing to Krishna, that is sufficient to take you back to Godhead. But it doesn't mean you wouldn't be chanting your rounds and following the principles sincerely. And we read a few days ago, Sureshwar, about how the Munichari gopis became gopis. The sages in the forest were blessed. And then once they were blessed, they took birth in Braj, in the Leela, and they got the elevator, they went right up in their Krishna consciousness. So the mood of the disciple is, okay, what my guru says I will do, what Prabhupada says I will do, and that's the real qualification. And that was the point I was making, that we saw that qualification in Prabhupada. And Prabhupada really didn't speak in terms of, he did speak, you have to be free of material desire to go back to Godhead. Of course, that's our philosophy. You have to have love. But generally, he spoke of obedience as love. Obedience is the first law of love. So I think that's the best way to understand it. Okay. And Krishna Karshani says, I often say that love is an action, not a feeling. Relating this statement to Krishna consciousness. We may not have feelings, love, but we may act like we have love. Yeah, exactly. And the feelings will come by acting that way. Kurnisha says, it's a scary thought to just imagine what would have happened if Prabhupada hadn't taken his spiritual master's instructions to heart. Yeah, and to go the way. Well, you'd have some bogus guru, most likely, doing some process that's, or you'd have some guru that's maybe not bogus, but not going to take you to the highest level. Yeah. Right. Where would we be? That is a beautiful thought. And we have one more comment, then we're going to go. Anandita, all the way from England. Can we apply the concept that books are more important than temples even today? Or do we need to apply this according to the context? Well, I have a nice story. Thank you for this question because it reminds me of a beautiful story, which I just read, I believe, yesterday in the book. So there was a schism in Gaudiya Math. There was a split. Some devotees were very active in building temples. It was one of the, they had 64 temples, so it was obviously one of the main services was to build temples. But also they had printing presses. They had 3 printing presses, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta really stressed books. Books, stressed it a lot. So there's these 2 camps that emerged the camp of everything is about philosophy, teaching, learning, disseminating philosophy. There's lots of emphasis. And then the devotees who were, building the temples and managing the missions said, well, you guys are just lazy, There's so much work to do. And they're saying, no, the essence is the philosophy, the teaching. So there was this conflict. No, you're lazy, you're just managers, you don't care about the philosophy, like that. And Bhaktisiddhanta resolved it. And we'll tell you next week what he said. No, okay, I'll tell you now. You want to know what he said? It's quite simple, but I think what he said, it's so helpful for us. And he said something very simple. He said, hearing, learning, preaching, that's more important. He said, after all, the temples are built for that purpose. That's why they exist. So if we just say temples are more important, Bhaktisiddhanta is saying, no, the temples are built to facilitate hearing and chanting. It obviously is the most important. So I really like that, right? Because, sometimes we can get caught up in doing something just to do something, like we did it. We did the festival. Well, what happened at the festival? Anybody get any books? Oh, we forgot the books. Oh my God. Did you preach to anybody? No, we didn't have time because we were, we had to dance on stage. We didn't have time to preach, So it's like you set everything up. Why are you setting it up? What's the whole point? To get people come so you can educate them, so you can talk to them, so you can meet them, so you can follow up. So I think that's so important to remember. And whatever we do, that's the point, so people can hear. Right? So that was a good question. Krishna has a nice question. Isn't serving Krishna and one spiritual master without wanting anything in return love? Yeah. See, what Krishna Karshani is saying is that the word for love in Sanskrit is prema. So prema is the stage that comes after bhava, and bhava, for most devotees, they haven't reached even bhava. Bhava is no small thing. So when we say I don't have any love, then strictly speaking, we're saying I haven't achieved the stage of bhava. But here's the thing. It's not like you have no love at the stage of a sakti, and then you get to bhava, and then it starts erupting, and then you get to prema, and no, it's a gradual development of love. So it's developing as you're advancing. You can't say you don't have any. It's not actually like that. I'm just not on the stage of love. So it's true. You do have love. That is love. And as I was saying, a little bit of relativization of the word love is necessary, because we don't want to recognize acts of love and devotion in ourselves and others and not acknowledge them. That's actually, this devotee, has a lot of love for Krishna. And the fact is, Prabhupada said, you boys and girls, you love Krishna. So we can use that word. Maybe not in the sense of prema, but as Prabhupada used it. Tanya says, I remember reading somewhere that one of the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada how he managed to chant his rounds. And he goes, Hasta, and he told him he would chant 4 rounds before breakfast, 4 before lunch, 4 before dinner, and I think 4 before going to bed, something like that. He would divide them up into 4. I guess because he was busy, he did it that way. Okay, so we're going to end class now. Hare Krishna to everyone. Thank you for coming, and seems like the phone works, right? It's more reliable. It has lower resolution, more reliable. I don't know. Maybe we go back to the phone. We'll see. Okay, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.